All right, we're going to call the council meeting to order. Everybody stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, take the roll.
Morissette?
Here.
Holmes?
Here.
Knudsen? Here. Kennedy?
Here.
Rook? Hall?
Here.
Mayor O'Connor?
Here.
Sorry.
All right. First thing up is, I got the wrong agenda up there. Okay, so first thing up is comments and suggestions from citizens present. Once again, this is a community opportunity to come up and talk about anything that you would like that's not currently on the agenda, anything that pertains to the city. It is an opportunity for residents only. If you would, please, if you come forward, state your name, address, keep it brief, and try not to repeat what other people have said. So, having said all that, is there anyone that would like to make a comment? Anyone that would like to make a comment? Anyone that would like to make a comment? Hearing none, we'll move on. We have a presentation regarding a concept development proposal by Reuter Walton for properties located at 307 2nd Street, 321 2nd Street, and 100 Commercial Street. And we have people here that are ready to make the presentation. Are you guys able to plug in okay?
Yeah, we tested it. Looks like it's working pretty smooth. The computer takes a long time to wake up.
Sure. It's got a lot to load.
Yeah, exactly. You can just page down, page up. That should work. I think this one might do it. Just advance it. Or you could do this button too.
Okay. Okay, thanks for your patience. Everybody can see this, I assume, okay?
Yep.
My name is Ari Peretz. I live at 1026 Portland Avenue in St. Paul, and I'm here representing Reuter Walton Development. We are really excited to share our concept proposal for a redevelopment of the Second and Commercial block. For those unfamiliar, it's the block that has boundaries on 2nd Street on the east, 1st Street on the west, Wisconsin Street on the south, and Commercial Street on the north. And rather than give sort of our take on the history of the site, we thought that the council would benefit from hearing from Ron Gagnon, who, among with his family, owns the site and has some really important site background and family history to share that I think will ground us really well in how we got where we are and where we're going. Ron?
That's good. Thanks.
My name's Ron Gagnon. Excuse me. I got hay fever and I got the same shirt on that the mayor does. That's a start. That's a foot in the door. I've lived in Hudson all my life. I guess technically the last 50 some odd years I've lived on County Road F north of Troyburn. We've owned some property in Hudson and around Hudson that we just kind of acquired out of need or usage at the time. Just by way of history, my mother was a farm girl, came from Somerset, and was in a beauty shop, worked at the Golden Rule in St. Paul. And she had these women from from 3rd and 4th Street coming over to her. They liked what she did. Why don't you open a shop in Hudson? Then we wouldn't have to drive so far. And I don't know how many people in this room have ever driven across the toll bridge or remember it. But that was the way to St. Paul, not 94 at all. And so she came over here, found somebody that wanted to sell a shop, bought it, went to the First National Bank at that time and wanted to borrow some money. And they said, well, that's all very nice, but what have you got for collateral? I don't know if my mother knew what that was, but how do you propose to pay this back? And she held out her hands and she said this, well, who do you know in Hudson that you think is going to come to your beauty shop? And she says, well, Mrs. Phipps comes over, Mrs. Casanova, and by the way, president of the bank was, I think, Day. And she says, your wife comes over to see me. Okay, fine. She got her money, opened the shop, paid it off, and that was somewhere in the neighborhood of 1936, 37. And I think she was about 25 years old. And a little bit later on, she and my dad got married. My dad was a contractor, mainly in the industrial, heavy industrial side of things, as opposed to housing and warehouses and that sort of thing. So he had been through a couple of partnerships that they'd rather not talk about, and my mother finally said, if you have another partner, I'm going to be it. And so in 1949, we incorporated, they did, incorporated under the present structure in the state of Wisconsin. And if you got to think the toll bridge right across from Dick's Bar was a Standard Oil station, so there was a lot of traffic. And if anybody knows anything about Highway 12, it goes from Seattle to Detroit, and it was almost like a transcontinental highway. So there was a lot of traffic. I think at that time Hudson didn't have any property taxes because the toll bridge paid it all. And so that was the first place. They shut the bridge got shut down in the 50s, I think, and so all that property became available, and we bought the lot from Standard Oil, and there was a lot behind it. And then we needed more room. The railroad, the depot that's downtown Hudson, was kind of a short line road that went from Hudson to River Falls to, I think, Prescott, that sort of thing. But it was just a short line deal. And we were using it. The railroad had abandoned it. They wanted to sell it, so we bought that. And then we bought, my mother bought the Williams building, and that was, Essie Williams had died, and it was an estate, so she bought that building. And a company called T.O. Plastics was in there. They made these foam extrusions for United Refrigerator, who used to be right across the street from the Pier 500, between that and the river. And they made industrial or commercial refrigerators along with Norlake. And so they were in there for quite a while, and then the product changed, they left, and we were looking at doing something with the building, but it had a lot of structural problems. The facade was ready to fall into 2nd Street, so we got a permit, we tore it down. And we still utilize the depot. Down from the Stone Building or Williams Building was Local Lumber Company. And Local Lumber Company went from there to, what is that? Not commercial, but you'd think I'd know that, but I don't. Commercial, 1 block south, across from the Erickson store now, and so they, Local Lumber owned that. First National Bank wanted to move. In the 70s, they bought that chunk. And the long and short of that was they owned about half the block. We owned about the other half of the block. And then there was always some thought about trying to do something. I had plans from Elliott Architect to try to do something on the part of the property that we own facing First Street, but it was more of a, gee, that'd be nice to do, but get some concept drawings and that's it. And then we were talking to Associated. Associated wanted to downsize their banking footprint. They had way too much bank for the way business is done today. And so we were talking to them, trying to put together a deal, and yeah, they were interested. And then out of the blue, they just decided they were gonna abandon their site downtown Hudson. It wasn't economical anymore. They had 2 banks up on the hill, and you wanna buy this place. So they put it out, I don't know who else was bidding on it, but we ended up getting it. So now we got the whole block. By this time, we got enough money tied up in this thing, we gotta do something with it. So that brings us to where we're at now. I don't know if anybody remembers the first hospital in Hudson, which was on Liberty Hill. That was built, and then they wanted to have an operation that catered a bit to seniors or older people to be able to handle them, house them a bit, and that sort of thing. We put that addition on. We put an addition on St. Patrick's School. When the toll bridge was in operation, probably about 8-9 years before it was shut down, we put a new deck on it, which meant there was some structural steel underneath, timbers, and a masonry top on it. And so we've been active in Hudson for a long time, and so here we are today to try to get your blessing on what we're proposing to do.
Perfect. Thank you, Ron.
Yep, thank you. Thanks for your time.
So we're the humble stewards to try to bring Ron's legacy and his family's legacy to life. And just a little bit about us. I won't read through all these bullet points, but Greater Walton's been developing housing for some time. We're at our 41st project and almost 5,000 units of housing across the Twin Cities metro area and down in Rochester. We work with municipalities of all kinds, from the core of the cities in Minneapolis and St. Paul to the outerlying areas. We just broke ground on a project in Stillwater earlier this year that we think offers a lot of similarities to this project, not a replica by any means, but a lot that we've learned in developing in a historic riverfront town and ways to blend the architecture in with what's there without copying it, paying respect to it, and bringing it to life. The overall goals that we have as a project team, which we felt strongly about anchoring everybody in before we started showing the pretty pictures and the renderings that ESG did a beautiful job creating. First and foremost, it's to do something big. We didn't want to do something piecemeal in downtown. Downtown has a lot of tremendous assets. We felt like doing something big on this block is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with the Gagnon family to create something that touches on what we've seen to be all of the needs that the downtown area has, which include new tax support for businesses, new housing opportunities for current Hudson residents and future Hudson residents, adding to the neighborhood vitality, helping to stitch it together and extend the downtown further south, where you have a really strong core of density that really could stand to improve as the Second Street goes from north to south. Building on the legacy that the Gagnon family have created here and doing something special. So that's really what we've tried to put together with this concept. It really is a concept. It's not something that is fully done, take it or leave it. We hope you love this. If you don't, we're out of options. This is at the very, very early stage where we're excited to get your thoughts, your feedback, and your advice as we continue to move this forward. So with that, I'll invite Bob Loken from ESG to come up and talk more about where we're at with the project.
Good evening, council members and mayor. I'm Bob Loken with ESG Architects located in downtown Minneapolis. And I'm just going to walk through the sort of design of the project. There's some kind of dry data here that some people may really get into and some people may want to wait for the pictures. But Just to give you a size of the scale of the development we're proposing primarily a multifamily residential project with 113 dwelling units of varying sizes, from small units for single people all the way up to large penthouse units. We're proposing a small amount of commercial space right on the corner nearest the existing downtown business district. We're proposing to provide all required parking and then some completely within the site, and all contained within one level underground and one level above grade, all of it encapsulated by actual buildings for people. So we don't really, even though there's going to be a lot of parking here, you won't see it from the street. There are a few applications we've identified. One is to rezone from the existing IL district to B3. Another one is to exceed the minimum lot area per dwelling, which is kind of an obscure application. Basically, the density of the development in terms of FAR, floor area ratio, is allowed, but with residential development, there's a minimum requirement of lot area per dwelling that we would need a variance from. One of the big applications is we'll need a variance to exceed the maximum allowable height of 45 feet. And we're working with staff to identify, whether or not we'll need a variance to reduce the required minimum amount of landscaped area, although this development will result in a net increase in permeable area. Sorry, it's faster than I want it to be. So here's just a view from First Street looking toward the river. You can see the overall, while the development takes up the entire block, it is designed to fit with the scale of the existing downtown structure. We propose a variety of different materials, different varying cornice heights, and you can see that the building responds to the incredible amount of grade change on the site. There's 17 feet of grade change across the site, and so what our design proposes to do is actually step the buildings down the hill, so it feels almost like a collection of buildings. Here's a view. Thanks to the powers of computing, we can sort of download GIS terrain and sort of place our building into context. So here you can see this is looking across the river toward Minnesota, and you can see this. This is our proposed development in the distance there. We wanted to, because the great asset of Hudson is the St. Croix River, and there are a lot of sort of codes that serve to protect that resource, and including the DNR, which has purview over this area as well, and they have their own height restriction as well. So we knew that one of the things that we would have to study really closely is what does this building look like, not only from within downtown and from the adjacent streets, but also from the river. So what this illustration does is place that building within this context. You can see it here behind some large poplar trees. And you can also notice that the bluff behind it. And then here's a view from way down the pier. And you can see our development here, again against the bluff. And then one more view, looking from downtown south. This is what our proposed development would appear like. And then a couple of plans. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of grade change on this site, so we're showing two plans. There's essentially two street level plans. One is a street level plan from the view of Second Street, and another one is a street level plan from the view of First Street. Those two levels are more than, those two streets are more than a story different in height. So here you can see the Second Street, which is our level one. We're proposing a commercial use here, and we'd love to hear some ideas about what might be appropriate in that commercial use. The remainder of Second Street, we're anchoring the other corner with our public amenities, lobby and leasing and fitness areas, and then a few residential units on the street. And then we're sort of wrapping the entirety of the building in residential units to sort of contain this parking. You can see this top level of parking would be accessed from Commercial Street. The next level down, you can see, is below-grade parking, which is kind of buried into the hillside. And then on First Street, there are exposed these sort of townhomes, and we're thinking about maybe two-level townhomes with doors and private entrances onto First Street and patios on First Street. And then the upper level, so there's level 2, which is similar to level 3. The building is arranged in a U shape with a large roof terrace that faces the river. And so the roof terrace would house outdoor amenities for residents, outdoor kitchen and grilling areas and fire pits and things like that. But there would also be a lot of vegetated roof, a lot of green roof. And then you can see this top floor. As the building sort of steps down the hill, we're proposing to step back the upper floor from the surrounding streets to minimize the sort of appearance of the building's bulk. And then the other feature that's not apparent in these plans, it'll become apparent in these next drawings, is that as the building steps down the hill, we're actually proposing that the levels of the building be almost like a split level building. And so we would have 2 elevators here that serve the sort of half levels. And again, that's to sort of respond to the site. So this is what we call a section drawing. It's almost like if it's like taking a slice of cake. If you slice in the cake and you look at the middle and the layers, this is what you see. So this is the bluff, and you can see how our building sort of nestles into the flat just below the bluff. And then this is just sort of a diagram to sort of illustrate how we decided to shape the building the way we did. If we start diagrammatically, if we just wanted to sort of fill the site, a reasonable way to develop this would be to design a sort of donut shape with a courtyard in the middle. There's a lot of developments that occur like that. But we're in an effort to respond to the site. What we're proposing is to sort of break up the site into one building that then pops up to respond to Second Street, another building that pops down to respond to First Street. And then you can see we're proposing, well, it doesn't really make much sense to have a wall of building facing the river. It would be much nicer if there were a courtyard that residents could use to enjoy views of the river. And it also helps to sort of break up the building and make it less monolithic. So we're proposing to take some of this building area and place it over here, again, to help sort of step the building down the hill. And then here, this illustration is of a more rendered appearance of this overall development. And then, so these next exhibits are really talking about the building height and the height variance that we require. So in Hudson, you're allowed to build up to 45 feet in this area. And so this is an example of a theoretical flat site. If our site were completely flat, this is what our development would look like. We would have a level of underground parking, a level of above-grade parking, and this red dashed envelope sort of describes the allowable buildable area on that site. And you can see this dashed line on the bottom is the grade, the average grade. But then our actual site, as you can see, slopes quite a bit. And so the way that both Hudson zoning code, we just came from Stillwater, Hudson zoning code, and the DNR's height code, they describe for sloped sites, they say that you take the average points of all around the site, and that average now becomes your average grade plane, and you measure height from there. So with our site, you can see this red box illustrates a theoretical allowable building. And, we could do this, but we think it makes much more sense to have the building sort of step with the site. And so this next slide, you can see, we're proposing to sort of redistribute what that allowable height is. And I'll go back one slide. So here's that first site. You can see there's a portion of our building here facing the river that we're proposing be shorter than what's allowed. And then there's a portion of our building on Second Street that we're proposing to be taller than what's allowed. And that corresponds to, what the height would be allowed if it were a flat site. So then again, this is what we're proposing to develop. So the building steps down the hillside. We would build the same amount of building area that would be allowed if it were a flat site, but we're proposing to sort of cascade it down the site. And with that, I think that's the end of our presentation. We'd be happy to answer questions or just have a dialogue, and we can go back and look at any slides that anyone might care to talk about.
Anybody? No questions? Comments? Wow.
I think it looks really nice. I mean, I do. I guess a couple of questions. The club room and the sky lounge, what are you anticipating with those?
I'll go back to that slide.
And I'm assuming it's just for residents.
Yep, residents and their guests. Yeah, so right here, so it's a common amenity, especially in a building here where you've got a little bit of view and a nice view, to put a resident amenity at that top level. Here, club room would be like essentially a lounge and a party room for use by residents and their guests. What we would do with the Sky Lounge, there'd be an adjacent terrace here. We don't want this to be a nightclub or something like that. So what we often do in small town municipalities, we can institute some sort of guidelines for use. We would have restricted hours of operation. Probably you couldn't use that space after 10 o'clock, say. We could limit music or decibels or something like that. We want this to be a peaceful community. So.
Yeah, and the club room, that's pretty big. Would that be rentable for the public or just your tenants?
Depends. I mean, sometimes, it would all depend on how, you all want to operate. I've worked in buildings sometimes where you can, a resident could sort of rent it out and host a gathering, watch the big game or something like that.
We're limited for rental space for nonprofit organizations, different things. So people are always looking for a place to rent or have their meetings on a monthly, weekly basis. Rotary, for example, always looking for a spot.
Yeah, I mean, we'd be happy to look at it. The hours that are more popular for residents are not always the hours that are more popular or more in need for things like you're talking about, council member. So it's definitely something that we could explore.
Just thought.
Yeah.
Joy?
Could you show us the southbound view of the drawing, looking down Second Street again?
Sure.
A few slides back.
There you go.
Okay, so, and you were mentioning the desire to have that higher appearance on Second Street side, is that correct? Is that what it looks like with the higher
Correct.
view, the extra, okay? And is that, have you already gotten approval on a variance for that, or that's part of your process? You're hoping they'll approve it, or?
This is the first step, is to talk with you all and get your feedback.
Yeah, we
Okay.
haven't had a public meeting related to the project
Sure.
before this one that we're having right now.
Yep, so basically, this is just, because of the scale of the project, something very new, really for us, is we wanted to have the introduction with the council. Any comments, questions, things like that up front, so they have some time to work on that a little bit. And there's a long process that this will have to go through. So we're talking numerous hearings.
I
It'll be in
understand.
front of the council, planning commission, board of appeals, things like that. So it's just the first step in a very long process. You'll be seeing this multiple more times.
Right, I thank you for clarifying that. Who would have to approve, there's several agencies that would have to approve that height.
I think
Difference.
it's just the planning commission that would approve.
So the city just has to, even though that there's federal regulations involved, we're responsible for enforcing those. So now the federal agencies involved and the state agencies will have a chance to provide comment once the formal application is received, and we'll have to take that into account as we review and things, but ultimately it's our responsibility to enforce those regulations. So we have to make sure that it meets any variance, whatever fits within not only ours, but also state, federal regulations for the Riverway and things like that too.
And just to be clear, the variance requests will not come to the Plan Commission and they will not come to the City Council. The variance requests are filed with the Board of Zoning Appeals, and there are no council members on the Board of Zoning Appeals. And so those specific requests to vary from your ordinances will be considered by that body.
Thank you. Well, it looks very attractive, so thank you
Thank you.
Thank you.
for showing it again.
Ari, price points?
Yeah, these, I know not everybody thinks in dollars per square foot like us
Just don't
developers
say
do.
market rate, because people don't like that.
It is not income restricted. Another way to say that is that it's market rate. But these are in the mid-twos per square foot. So if you had 1,000 square foot unit on average, which is pretty close to what the average of these units is, multiply that by 2.3 to 2.5 is roughly what the rents are
Okay.
per month.
What's the smallest unit?
We have alcoves that are just under 600 square feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have
So you're
two-bed,
talking like 1,500?
thereabouts. And then we have 2-bed plus dens and 3-bed units, and then the 9 townhomes that line First Street that are quite a bit larger.
Right.
All rental?
All rentals.
Mike?
Thank you. Yeah, I think it looks pretty nice. Question about this specific picture. For the elevation, where you guys are trying to get at, are there any other buildings downtown, especially on Second, that are as higher than what you guys are requesting?
Yeah, actually, I mean, there's a proposed development. Actually, let's go to
It's
this.
this on the section.
Yeah, let's go to that section. This one might actually work better. This next, no, you're right.
Right there.
So here, what we've dashed in is the 400 to 406 Second Street proposal. And that would be, you know, from the standpoint of Second Street, that one would be significantly taller than what we're proposing.
But nothing that exists right now is?
Correct.
Okay. And then also the parking you mentioned is gonna have, you know, more than what you need. Is that available to the public parking spaces?
We haven't designed it to be,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that we couldn't make some number of spots available to the public if we, and the city, determined that our demand was being met with on-site parking. If there was an excess there, it'd be better to make it available to the public.
Yeah, there are some strategies for sharing parking between uses. So residential use tends to meld very well with daytime office use because the peak time of use for residential is overnight, obviously,
Yep.
when they're home, so.
Thanks.
Anybody else? All right.
Could you
Oh,
go to
Bill?
the, I'm sorry, yeah. Could you go to the dashed line step up
Yeah,
piece? So,
yeah, so this, you can see there's a horizontal line that is sort of in between Second Street and First Street. This is what is considered the average grade plane. And so then that volume you're seeing here is 45 feet above that average grade plane. So this portion of the building would be not allowed by that. What we're proposing for the variance and the sort of demonstration of hardship is that with the sloped portion of the site, that we can actually better honor the intent of the height restriction by stepping the building down the hill, you know, removing some height from closer to First Street and adding that height to Second Street. So then I'll go to just that next slide here.
the addition on the Second Street side, how much difference is that?
It depends on how we measure it, so, it could be as much as, I think, 16, 17 feet, but that is because it's measuring all the way up to elevator overruns. So where the elevator is, it has to pop up, 6, 7 feet.
Gotcha.
And so that would include that.
Yeah, so if you see down the line an application, or you read about an application for a really high number of feet that we're asking for, it's probably because it's measured from this point, if you see where my cursor is.
Yep,
Which is underground.
right.
Yeah.
8 feet or so underground.
Yeah, right.
So part of the case that we'll have to make to the Board of Zoning Appeals and to others is, while this is a number that sounds high, it's practically not a very useful number, because nobody can stand 8 feet underground and then look up to see how high the building is. We try to make it real and talk about what the variance heights are from where somebody can stand on First Street and Second Street.
Do you have a height there if I'm standing on?
Roughly 50 feet, I think, but we're still refining that.
Understood.
So it's in that, we'd like to be single digits over the 45-foot limit, not double digits.
Got it. I know what would be useful for me, and I know you mentioned something like this, Mike, about seeing the elevations of what's surrounding it. Just that sort of, I like the picture that you did, but it'd be nice to see what that actually does.
Yeah,
to that.
sometimes I think an exhibit that we have used a lot is where we do a sort of site plan and we note heights of different buildings around there.
Sure,
So
that'd be
numerically.
useful.
Yeah, definitely.
On your drawing where you compared it to the proposed building at 404, 406 Second Street, is the difference in height, the street level height from the grade? Or is that actually, that drawing shows,
Right, so just like, they're in a heavily sloping site as well. So their average grade plane, from what they measure, is, just like our average grade plane is 8 feet underground, their average grade plane is probably 8 feet
higher,
above ground.
Right.
Yep.
right?
So,
Above your ground, anyway.
right,
Above your
right. So,
level, right.
right, so I know they needed a variance for height. I don't know exactly what that is.
Yeah, as far as I know, I don't think it's been applied for, or it hasn't been heard yet.
Yeah. Yeah, so from Second Street, if you're standing on Second Street, their building, the tallest point of their building will be significantly taller than the tallest point of our building, but because they're in a further up the
They're
hill,
high up the grade.
their average grade plane is different than
Yep.
ours.
I understand that. Thank you.
But they don't have approval for that, that's just their proposal?
Correct.
So as far as we know.
Yeah.
Have you initiated your conversations with the DNR and the state?
Yes.
So what I'm getting, how was the reception? What I'm getting at is the time frame, and what you realistically, when are we gonna see things start moving? If you get everything
So,
approved.
as the city attorney previously mentioned, and others, I think, as far as we understand it, the city is responsible for enforcing the DNR's regulations, that they'll get an opportunity to weigh in once we submit a formal application. We've done some, what I would call informal consultation with them to try to get their read on how would you respond if we submitted an application like this, because we don't wanna waste time. If that was gonna be a brick wall, it doesn't make sense
Right.
for us to move forward. What we found is that, the DNR didn't seem interested in kind of weighing through the variance required findings that you'd have to demonstrate in advance.
Okay.
So whereas we feel a strong conviction that we have a case to make about the practical difficulty that this site has because of 17 feet of grade change, which is, in our opinion, a textbook example of why a height variance is granted. It's actually hard to find one that is more cut and dry than a grade change. We think that we can make that, it's defendable, and if the city finds merit in that, we think and hope that the DNR will too. We don't know, but that's what we hope.
Were there similar applications on the Stillwater project that you had to get along the St. Croix Scenic Riverway?
No, there wasn't a DNR.
Correct.
There was a DNR.
No,
Okay.
no, there wasn't.
There was not a similar DNR weigh-in on it.
Right.
Okay.
There was a similar sensitivity to height though, and
Yeah.
we worked through it.
Yeah, we required a height variance based on the city's zoning code.
I do want to underscore one point as you compare or think about this project as it relates to 400 to 406. The west side of Second Street is in the St. Croix Riverway District, which is why the DNR comes into play, and that the Riverway District regulations. The east side of Second Street is not in the Riverway District. And so project on that side does not include DNR involvement. So, you know, similar, but a distinction just based on which side of the road you're on and
Correct.
whether or not you're in that district.
Yeah, here's that boundary. It goes right down Second Street.
So your DNR reception, if, real quick, was warm to lukewarm at best? Or just don't come to us yet and tell you?
I'd probably say more like
Non-committal.
lukewarm.
Yeah.
It was basically, we have a regulation, you should follow it. There wasn't a lot of credence paid to the variance application process and the variance findings, which I understand. I mean, it was
Yeah.
early, it's like they weren't gonna get into the weeds when we weren't at that stage. So it was follow the regulation, and we said, well, you know, we have a reason why we think that a variance is merit.
And the positive here is that the regulation is pretty clear, and it sets out the standards. The burden is on the applicant to come in and make its case to the Board of Appeals and to, you know, lay out the facts as they have here, and I'm sure they will have additional facts and arguments that they will present to the Board of Appeals, and the Board of Appeals will get to decide whether they've met those standards sufficient to approve a height variance and the other variances as requested.
Anybody else? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate the presentation. All right, consent agenda.
Approve the meeting minutes for May 2nd, 2022, regular council meeting. Approve claims in the amount of $577,711.16. Approve the one-year conditional use permit review for automatic sales at 1401 Gateway Circle, All-Star Mobility LLC. Approve a pedestrian caution sign on River Ridge Road. Approve the Hudson Lions Hometown Music Fest. And approve the purchase of a 2014 Ford F-150 from Hudson Ford in the amount of $22,300.
Move to approve.
Second?
Got a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Roll call?
Morissette?
Yes.
Alms?
Yes.
Brooke? Knutson?
Here, yes,
All
approved.
goofy, sorry. Kennedy?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Motion's approved, consent agenda is approved. You know, that's pretty much it for the agenda. I don't have anything for any communications or further agenda items. Anybody?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.